right. Kicked off of RT because we live in a dystopian shitbird of a country. You know what? Is World War III such a bad thing? That's my government secret. Maybe wiping off the human race is like, I think we had our shot. Like maybe we should all die. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Lee Camp, everybody.
Thanks, man. That was a good intro.
Wasn't that great? Like the human race is useless. Lee Camp. Like,
did you not get your green juice today? Is this a lack of green juice?
I got done with yoga. I had plenty of time. I came home. I made a delicious smoothie. Was all ready, like getting set up. Boom. I was going to find This Week in Government Secret. Is excited to do the show. And then literally 45 minutes of this, like my computer wouldn't start. And there was some weird, you need to de-encrypt. I was like, what? I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to my computer. It's a fairly new laptop. Like
weirdly, I had the same shit today, but different. For the first time ever, I've resisted it, but for the first time ever, I bought an iPad because I need it for like a teleprompter thing I'm trying to put together. Mm-hmm. And so I get the iPad, and honestly, just logging into the fucking thing is like an hour and a half of my life. It's like, keep saying the server's crashing. It's not logging into this. It's denying that password. It sent a confirmation code to some email account you haven't checked in 6 years. It's like, it was amazing.
That's literally what I just went through, but it wasn't just for logging into the computer. Then I had to do that to log into StreamYard, then to Rockfin, then to YouTube, because we simulcast, right? So it's like,
And I never remember any passwords, so
of course not. And I have complicated passwords, so they're not hackable. So that they're all got, and my computer suddenly was like, "Oh, it was our job to remember them." Like, yes, computer, this is your job. Like
my laptop was like, I didn't know. I didn't know
I was supposed to save all the passwords. I mean, I wrote it down on an Etch-a-Sketch. No, shitbird. This is your primary function. So yeah, it was just like that for a half hour. It's a half hour of that.
The only ones I remember are, for a while, I made my password. Holy fucking shit, I hate passwords. And then I often get it right. But
there's some passwords that I have memorized because there are a bunch of crazy things that like no one could ever figure out about me. Like only I know, like encrypted. I have encrypted secrets in my brain that no one could ever figure out.
No one's going to guess your password is I tan my balls. No one's going to guess that.
You don't know the numbers I've assigned to each one of my balls. So there's no,
I tan 3 and 9. Yeah.
I tan 3 ampersand hashtag.
Right.
One of my balls actually is pi. So it's infinite. It just goes on forever.
That one's much larger.
Yeah, I do. That's a big government secret. One of my balls is just like a size of a cantaloupe. It's really weird. I have to wear special pants.
Specially designed pants.
But inside that ball, or written on the outside, is all of my passwords.
You've heard of the Big and Tall store, but you haven't been to the Big and Balls store.
I go to Tall and Ball. That's what I go to.
Tall and Ball. Exactly.
I have to get special underwear, but it's that's where I store my passwords. Is on my one giant ball.
There's a lot of real estate there for tattoos. Luckily,
I get a tattoo. It's like the movie Memento.
Yeah, it's like Memento, but with passwords and a giant ball. It's very similar. They tried to make a limited edition series out of it, but TV series.
Oh, God.
Anyway, luckily I have plenty enough to fill the show. This will probably be part 1 of maybe even 3 parts on World War I.
Yes. I love hearing about how World War I was completely manufactured. I've studied, some of this is mentioned in Chris Hedges' Death of the Liberal Class, which is where I first learned about it, of course, because I was not taught this in school.
A lot of this is, well, at least today's episode, a lot of this is about the censorship and the propaganda around World War I that, believe it or not, very similar to what's happening today.
What? I thought everything, well, first of all, I think everything we're being told today is the honest truth, especially regarding Russia and Ukraine. I mean, that's all I've seen is just nonstop truth bombs being shot out of the mouths of the CNN and the Fox and the MSNBC crowd.
Straight truth bombs. Yep.
And I mean, I think it's noble that working class kids get to go die for billionaires. You know what I mean? I think that's a really solid way to do it.
It gives purpose to their life. It gives their existence meaning. That's what Sartre said. Yep.
You get to die for oligarchs. Does that make you?
Yep.
We'll name a grain of sand after you for doing that, and that's how we'll show our appreciation. So, all right. Government secrets, 3-parter, part 1. World War I turns out was bullshit. All right.
Well, damn it! You just gave away the whole thing. I think I'm done.
Did I? Spoiler alert: World War I was bullshit.
So, 1912, Woodrow Wilson elected president of the TPA. No, wait, United States. So this is, by the way, most of this info is coming from Oliver Stone's Untold History of the United States. Excellent book. People should check it out.
Is it?
It's not just Oliver Stone, by the way. It's also Peter Kuznick, a great historian. And also,
doesn't Howard or Oliver Stone's doc series on Netflix, doesn't it also reference a lot of Howard Zinn's Untold History of America?
Yeah, I think he does reference Howard Zinn, and he was clearly inspired to, I think, put together this book based on Howard Zinn's work. Yeah.
Which is another fun read. I mean, if you want like a light vacation beach read Howard Zinn's Untold History of the United States. It is a blast, especially just the Christopher Columbus excerpts are just fun.
I picked, because I heard about Lin-Manuel Miranda decided to write Hamilton because he read a Hamilton biography, and I was like, couldn't he have done something like People's History of the United States? Would have been a very different musical. A lot of blood. You remember that? You remember the play in Addams Family when Wednesday and Pugsley spray blood all over the audience? That would be the musical of People's History.
I would go to that musical. The last musical I think I saw was American Idiot. No. It was what was the other one making fun of the Mormons?
Oh yeah.
Book of Mormon.
What was the other one about the book the Mormons had? I can't remember the name. It was something.
The Mormons had a book, and the story was about the book. Like it was almost
the
like
Mormons
a book
had they definitely had a book in it. I can't remember. Things people in white shirts say. I think was that it?
Guys on bicycles.
Yeah.
But they had like a book. There was something about Mormons in a book. I can't remember.
It was Newer Jesus Christ Superstar was the name of it.
That sounds great. Newer Jesus Christ Super, like that one somebody's pitch.
Missouri Jesus Christ Superstar.
Missouri.
So, well, considering we got through one sentence in the last 5 minutes, this is gonna be a long, long day. But so Wilson's, it says his rigidity was fueled by the dangerous belief that he was carrying out God's plan. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before. When people do that, when they think God told them to do crazy shit.
Oh boy, it's like cult leaders, George W. Bush. It's happened a lot.
Yep. He viewed it as that the United States had a global mission. And he also shared his Southern forebears' sense of white racial superiority, taking steps to resegregate the federal government while he was in office. Yes, that's right. After the Civil War, there was some desegregation. Wilson got into office, resegregated.
Oh, yeah, that's what this country needs more. Resegregation. We need more.
I mean, yeah, it makes a lot of sense because just 40 years after the Civil War, he was like, The problem here is that there's too many black people really being accepted into high levels of government.
Yeah, that was the big issue in 1912, right? I'm sure that was just rampant, just women and people of color taking over.
The entire, I mean, you'll recall the entire Supreme Court, all black back then.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 1912 when women didn't even have the right to vote yet.
Yep.
Oh, Woody. Oh, you're such a pistol.
Wilson even screened D.W. Griffith's pioneering and racist film, Birth of a Nation, at the White House in 1915 for cabinet members and their families. In the film, a heroic KKK gallops in just in time to save white Southerners, especially helpless women, from the clutches of brutish, lascivious freedmen and their corrupt white allies. The black people in that film are basically white guys in blackface acting like fucking goblins, just like, ah, and attacking white women. And then the KKK saves the day. And Wilson commented at the end of the film, quote, "It is like writing history with lightning. And my only regret is that all of it is so terribly true." You know, when you should doubt whether something is terribly true is when you see white actors painted like they're black. That's the moment you should be like, I don't know if this is accurate.
Yeah, this is such a compelling thing for like, there's no systemic racism. Really? It's like white supremacists have been getting a hold of the White House for quite a while. Yeah.
Wilson's
hatred. Remember what I said at the top of this episode. World War III might not be a bad idea. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lee. Finish this.
That reminds me of a joke I had around circa 2012, 10 years ago now. 2012 was supposed to be the year that we thought the Mayan calendar predicted the end of the world.
Right.
I believe there was a bad John Cusack movie related to that. And
yes, I remember that. That was where like he's being chased by an earthquake or something like that. It was
fantastic. Earthquakes were hiding behind every corner. Like every time he turned a corner, it was an earthquake. And I believe the movie was called 2012. Yes. And anyway, I had a joke around then where it was like later in 2012 or 2013 or whatever. And I'd be like, did you ever think maybe the Mayan prediction the world was going to end in 2012 was not a prediction, but a recommendation?
The Mayans were like, look, by 2012, let's wrap this up. Like
you got kids on leashes and dogs in sweaters. Just call it a day. Call it a day.
Dogs and sweaters really is the sign of the apocalypse. That is one of the biggest, like, oh, the human race is over. Like all the technology we could be doing to save the world and make the place a better, and just have the whole globe just be a utopia. We're going to put a dog in a sweater. Okay, we're done.
So Wilson's hatred of revolution and staunch defense of U.S. trade and investment would color his presidency and influence his policies both at home and abroad. In Mexico, down in Mexico, American bankers and businessmen, particularly oil men, had a major stake in the outcome of the revolution going on there. And I know this will blow you away because we haven't talked much on the show about Mexico, but U.S. and British corporations had thrived under Porfirio Diaz's 3-decade dictatorship, laying siege to almost all of Mexico's minerals, railroads, and oil. They had reason for concern when Francisco Madero's revolutionary forces overthrew Diaz in 1911. So I know that'll shock you that the business interests were exploiting Mexico.
It's weird. It's like, I feel like we've heard that story before, but I'm trying to remember, like, there was
another country, right? That happened to?
Have we ever talked about another country that, like, America either backed a dictator or staged a coup to put a dictator in there so that American businesses could profit from that country's resource? I mean, have we ever brought that up?
I mean, I'm trying to remember what it was. Was it Switzerland? There was some other country.
It was either Switzerland or, where was it? Was it like, Canada? Did we do it in Canada? I'm trying to think. Sweden.
Probably.
No?
Sweden. Yeah, probably Sweden.
All right.
I'm not going to do much of the what was going on in Mexico, but in August 1914, U.S. backed Venustiano Carranza replaced Huerta, but Carranza, a staunch nationalist, refused to bargain with Wilson, who then threw his support behind Pancho Villa, beginning a bungled series of political and military interventions into the Mexican Revolution. So then the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria by a Serbian fanatic on June 28, 1914, triggered a chain of events that in August plunged the world into the most brutal orgy of bloodshed and destruction humanity had yet seen. That predominantly European bloodletting, World War I, would be only the start of a century of unending warfare and horrific violence, human and technological barbarism on an unimaginable scale that would later come to be known as the American century.
That should be printed on the side of like hot dogs.
Just straight up inked into the side of hot dogs that they hand out at ballparks while you're saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah. While you're watching the game, saluting, say like that, you should be reading like, oh, the century of barbarism and that was like poetry. Oh God. Yep. And then that should be like unfurled on like a big flag, like as they're starting a NASCAR race, like, gentlemen, start your engines. And then that flag rolls out, a century of barbarism, the Americans. As the guy's like waving the flag, like, yeah.
And what do you want the whole crowd? What do you want about the whole crowd would be like? Yeah, the American century.
We're the best fucking barbaric sons of bitches ever. Yes.
So what caused World War I had a lot to do with entangled alliances. And they say entangled alliances threatened to turn local conflicts into global conflagrations. And in August 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war against Serbia. What looked to be a third Balkan war quickly spiraled out of control. The Central Powers, Germany, Turkey, and Austria-Hungary, lined up against the Triple Entente, France, Great Britain, Italy, Japan, and Russia. Others would soon join, and, it just fucking turned into an orgy of death. Only Europe's large socialist and labor parties and trade unions could prevent the slaughter. They knew that the most important conflict was between capital and labor. What? Not German workers and their British worker counterparts. This sounds kind of similar to today. We have more in common with, I don't know, Russian workers, Ukrainian like average people, than we have in common with the ruling elite of our own country, or than Russian people have in common with the ruling elite of their country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The socialist and labor parties pledged that if the capitalists went to war, the workers would refuse to follow. Why, they asked, should workers die to enrich their exploiters? However, most of them were not able to resist as the propaganda spiraled forth. Only in Russia and Serbia did the socialists stand true. In country after country, nationalism trumped internationalism. Loyalty to nation outweighed loyalty to class. Europe's naive young men marched off to die for God, glory, greed, and the defense of the fatherland.
Wow. That's, again, it's great how they use nationalism and, heroic stuff to get working class people to die for them.
Yeah, to send them out. And honestly, in Ukraine right now, we're seeing Ukrainians used as cannon fodder in a proxy war between Russia and the U.S. So, lovely.
Oh, of course. I mean, there's that video. I need to show it to you, but that I showed on my show last week of this American like mercenary. I think he was ex-military, but a guy in his 20s who decided to go to Ukraine. He was told, "Oh, I'm going to fight big bad Russia," and they got there and they're like, They didn't give us any weapon. They gave us one clip with 10 rounds of ammo, and told us to go fight. We're like, we're not doing that. And they said, if you try to leave Russia, you were going to get shot in the back. Like Ukrainian.
You mean leave Ukraine?
Yeah, you tried to leave Ukraine.
Yeah.
The Ukrainian army was going to shoot them in the back, and they had to like put on Red Cross outfits and sneak out of the country. And like weird, I didn't see that guy's interview. Didn't seem to make it to Anderson Cooper's show. I don't
Really? I thought they gave him an hour on Wolf Blitzer. No,
know.
No,
Maybe not. No, they didn't show the clip from 2014 on Democracy Now, where this scholar who's since passed say that America is provoking Russia into a war if we're not careful, and Ukraine will be used. And
yep, Stephen Cohen, and he died a couple of years ago, and the year before he died, he was being called like a Putin apologist because he didn't fall for Russiagate, basically.
Yep.
So most Americans at this time sympathized with the Allies against the Central Powers, but few clamored to join the fight. That's interesting. So before enough propaganda and bullshit had been washed, across the mainland of the United States, most did not want to fight in this war. Eugene Debs, the famous socialist and four-time presidential candidate, urged workers to oppose the war, wisely observing, let the capitalists do their own fighting and furnish their own corpses, and there will never be another war on the face of the earth. As reports of the fighting filtered in, anti-war sentiment held strong for a while. Despite overwhelming sympathy for the Allies, the United States declared neutrality in the war. It was, however, a kind of false neutrality because they helped fund the Allies. They gave $2.5 billion to the Allies and almost nothing to the Central Powers. And the House of Morgan, this is interesting. J.P. Morgan, the House of Morgan was especially involved, serving as the British government's sole purchasing agent between 1915 and 1917.
I'm shocked that banks were involved in profiting from war. I'm really shocked at that too. Like this news just keeps. I mean,
I bet they gave it to them with no interest. Just free of charge. Enjoy.
Enjoy.
So the idea, Wilson's idea was that remaining neutral would allow him to mediate an end to the war. But he rejected Bryan's effort to bar U.S. citizens from traveling on belligerent ships. So basically, he was asked to bar U.S. citizens from traveling on ships that were connected to countries in the war, because then they're kind of on ships that could be targeted. And he refused to do that. In May 1915, Germany sank the British liner Lusitania, leaving 1,200 dead, including 128 Americans. Now, here's another government secret. Although it was denied, the ship was in fact carrying a large cargo of arms to Great Britain.
Oh, weird. Boy, this again sounds familiar. Like Putin blew up a Holocaust memorial. No, he shot a TV station that was a communications hub that was near that, like. And now we're finding reports of the Ukrainians putting, like you were saying, civilians in buildings to then say, oh, the Russians are bombing civilians. Yeah. Not that I'm excusing any of the Russian bombs, but
just because I know we have to make it clear, otherwise people don't get it. I'm opposed to the Russian invasion, but that doesn't mean you can't understand what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm opposed to the Russian invasion. And, as we've talked about, and everyone's, the first casualty of war is the truth. So there's Russian propaganda, there's Ukrainian propaganda, and there's American Western propaganda. And everybody's painting a one-sided view of just the other side is bad. And where do we find the truth?
So hilariously, Wilson won re-election in 1916 with the slogan, "He kept us out of war." But that did not hold true later. He was increasingly coming to believe that if the U.S. didn't join the war, it would be denied a role in shaping the post-war world. Mm-hmm. So basically, if you aren't in this war, then you don't get to own what the spoils are afterwards. Wilson, in 1917, dramatically delivered the first formal presidential address to the Senate since the days of George Washington. He called for peace without victory, based on core American principles, self-determination, freedom of the seas, an open world with no entangling alliances. The centerpiece of such a world would be a League of Nations that would enforce the peace a demand initially advanced by groups within America's peace movement, such as the Women's Peace Party. Wilson's peace message struck the right chord with most Americans, but Wilson's real motive was his belief that only by entering the war could we be guaranteed a voice in negotiations. So even in World War I, basically Americans were talked into war by saying, well, the only way to get to peace is with lots of war.
Well, yeah, and this is where Wilson hired George Creel to create the Creel Commission.
We're going to get into that. Yep.
Okay, you're going to get into that. All right.
The president explained that as a head of a nation participating in the war, the president of the United States would have a seat at the table, but that if he remained the representative of a neutral country, could only look, he would be left on the outside. So basically it was like, well, we'll sacrifice thousands of men to make sure we have power over, the countries afterwards and can continue to exploit and extract resources around the world. So in April 2nd, 1917, Wilson asked Congress for a declaration of war. Now, see, these were back in the days where the president had to go to Congress to ask for a declaration of war.
Wow.
Man,
so
did we do away with that?
School. Oh, thank God. I mean, that's just like having to call the operator, like, operator, connect me with Lee Camp. Like now.
Yeah, exactly.
Now there's an app where I can just call you and I can just bomb. They can just boom, you know, there's like countries come up on this. Basically it's this, like, Boeing has like basically like a Tinder app, and there's just like cities, and you swipe right on the ones you want to bomb and swipe left on the ones you don't, basically is what happens.
Exactly. So yeah. And 6 senators opposed the vote for war. They were able to get 6 people that wanted to continue to have peace. Opponents attacked those who didn't vote for war. No, sorry. Opponents attacked Wilson as a tool of Wall Street because this was Wall Street's war in some regard. They said, quote, "We're about to put a $ on the American flag." Yeah, that'd be the first time that was done. Despite government appeals for 1 million volunteers, reports of the horrors of trench warfare and poison gas dampened enthusiasm for some odd reason. Only 7.
What? Trench warfare seems like a blast. It just seems like paintball. Like,
chemical
oh my God.
warfare seeping into trenches sounds like just a good time.
Oh, I mean, have you watched Dunkirk? It's a blast. No, that's World War II.
That's World War II.
What was the one that, not Dunkirk, but the one that,
oh, yeah. That other one. Oh, 1917 or something, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
The one where,
yeah, he showed all of the footage, the actual, and he colorized it and showed like actual footage of how awful. And then, yeah, 1917 is one as well. All Quiet on the Western Front's another great movie about World War I, showing how awful trench warfare is. Gallipoli is another good one, showing how the Aussies were just used as literally bullet sponges by the British Empire.
This is why we have a film nerd on the show. We need 4 more.
Yeah, I watch Gallipoli, watch All Quiet on the Western Front. There's 2. There's a black and white version in the 30s, and then the more modern version that came out in the 80s, I think. Watch 1917, and then I'm blanking on the name of the documentary. Someone in the chat the guy that did, I'm blanking on his name now. I'm a film. How much of a filmer? I'm blanking. The guy that from New Zealand that did the Lord of the Rings movies.
Jackson, Peter Jackson.
Yeah, Peter Jackson did that documentary where he took all of this black and white World War I footage and kind of showed you what it was like. This is somebody put that in the chat. I'm going to go nuts if I forget this. They will not grow old. That's it. Thank you, Kate. Watch those movies and you'll learn more about World War I.
Yeah, and there's still on Netflix, I think, colorized versions of like World War II. It's pretty fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, because for some odd reason you add color to something, and I'm like, oh, it was like human beings. It's just like without color, I'm like, this was 9 billion years ago.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there's not a brontosaurus walking by.
Well, the Peter Jackson doc, he uses interviews of World War I vets from like the 1950s describing what they went through. And then he takes, newsreel, black and white newsreel footage, colorizes it. He's very forward thinking, and he always finds new technology with filmmaking. So that's why they will not grow old is really profound. My grandfather he lied about his age to join the army. So that's why this kind of propaganda drives me nuts.
He was 72 and he said he was 16.
Yeah, actually, he was like 16 and lied so he could get in the army. And some commanding officer, this colonel, really liked him. So he ended up just being his assistant in London and never had to go to France. Otherwise, I might not be here had he. And I have letters that he wrote to my grandmother talking about, we've got Fritz on the run. That's what they called the Germans, was Fritz, because he had access to intel,
Right.
These typed letters that would take 2 weeks to get to my grandmother in Sterling, Illinois. And I have a photo of him when he was like 17 in the army. It was crazy to think about, but anyway,
that is crazy.
Another reason why I'm against war. Oh, I had an uncle fought in World War II and Korea, and was in the Chosin Valley. And when he came home, he wasn't the same guy, and he committed suicide. So anyway, war's fantastic. Anyway, what were you saying?
Very, very fantastic. Yes, indeed. So despite government appeals for 1 million volunteers, after 6 weeks, they only had 73,000 people sign up, forcing Congress to institute a draft. Now, this is when things get exciting on the censorship front. The government established an official propaganda agency, the Committee on Public Information, CPI, headed by Denver newspaperman George Creel. The committee recruited 75,000 volunteers, known as 4-Minute Men, who delivered short patriotic speeches in public venues across the country. That's for those of you who are young. Public venues are like the Twitter of the day. That's what being in public was. It flooded the nation with propaganda touting the war as a noble crusade for democracy and encouraged newspapers to print stories highlighting German atrocities. It also asked Americans to inform on fellow citizens who criticized the war efforts. If you see someone criticizing the war where millions are dying, then, call us. If you see something, say something.
Or crash their computer before you do a podcast called Government Secrets.
Or crash the computer, or delete the entire channel that the person's worked at for 8 years from all of history.
There's that one. Demonetize them. Pull off 500 videos of that from Abby Martin. There's just stuff like that. Fun stuff that you can just...
That kind of stuff. If anyone wants to keep supporting me, patreon.com/LukeCamp. For many... For many Americans, democracy had become a kind of secular religion that could exist only within a capitalist system. Many also associate it with Americanism. Victor Clark's study of wartime press for the National Board for Historical Service remarkably but revealingly concluded that the voluntary cooperation, keyword voluntary, of the newspaper publishers of America resulted in a more effective standardization of information and arguments presented to the American people than existed under the nominally strict military control exercised in Germany. We had stricter propaganda in the U.S. under the voluntary, just be nice to the U.S. government code among newspaper publishers than they had in Germany, where it was enforced by the military. Yeah, I mean, that's the key. It's like you force a man to do something and he's fucking furious. If you manipulate him into thinking it was his idea to do something, then he's fine.
Yeah. Yes, it's the best tactic in the world. And we've been doing this. I mean, hey, 9/11 was great to get a bunch of young people to join up and go fight over there. And I mean, had I been in high school when 9/11 happened, I probably would have joined. I mean, I was in college during the first Gulf War. Yeah.
Yeah, and even though obviously 9/11 was a real event, the propaganda afterwards was shifted to justify war, not just in Afghanistan when almost all the hijackers were Saudi, but war in Iraq, fucking, it just spiraled from there, just decimating whole countries.
Yeah. And like, we're still this 20-year global war on terror. It's like, we're still paying for it. We're still paying for it with 22 veteran suicides a day. I mean, like we're paying it in a gutted infrastructure because all of our money has been spent on all these wars. Like we're paying for it in these, these despair statistics, like the opioid epidemic. I mean, we're paying for it, like across the board on all. I mean, our society is completely gutted. I mean, all the things we were all aware of before COVID, and just so we can, and now we're trying to, if people are really like, we don't want to get involved, believe me, there's going to be a Russian false flag. There's going to be like, oh, a Russian terrorist blew up something in America, and they're going to get a bunch of young people to go over and join and fight the Russian army. And they're going to send more teenagers to their death so billionaires can profit.
Well, and even if it's not actually fight Russia, the reason we're avoiding a hot war with Russia is because of nuclear Armageddon. But what they're manufacturing consent for right now, the government and our mainstream media, is they're manufacturing consent for a level of Cold War that we haven't seen in decades, that just decimates economies, and the ramifications then ripple across Europe and into the US. Right. I mean, they're already, even the effects haven't even been felt yet. And it's like, I had to buy some stuff today. I was out, like, store shelves are empty. There's not enough workers because they don't want to pay enough. And so it's like you're in an empty store with empty shelves and not anyone to like help you if you need something. It's like, this is the America we've built by dumping all of the money into military and acting like the society at home doesn't matter, because honestly, the only reason the ruling elite view the society as even being here is just to exploit and extract. They don't care that and I heard a great analysis that I hadn't thought of, and I'm sure people who study this stuff more than me, it's just so obvious. But a lot of the social spending that America used to do that we've now tried to slowly gut, like Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare and public schools and et cetera, it was put into place when the American ideal was fighting against the socialist ideal, the communist nations. So basically America was like, well, we have to give the citizens this because they're looking over there and they're noticing those people have healthcare and have public schools and stuff. And so it was like there were two choices of a reality, and America realized they had to give some of those positive things to their citizens to avoid revolution. Nowadays, there's really not as much, there's so little of socialism left. I mean, China is very capitalist. And so there's no need. There's not nearly as much need in America to actually make sure that the social safety net and everything is there for people.
Yeah. And now the alternative now, there is no big Soviet. I mean, this is the other thing too, that just like, they're kind of caught in their lies. Like, Russia is not communist. And so they have sort of some free market, capitalism in their economy, as is evidenced by the fact that there's all these corporations, McDonald's is over there. And
I still hear smart people occasionally trip up and go, well, they saw Soviet tanks rolling into, like, Soviet tanks. Really? You think they still have Soviet tanks? Like, Putin Putin was Yeltsin's like handpicked successor, and Yeltsin was put in by America. So America for a long time viewed Putin as their guy. And he's a fucking cutthroat capitalist. He just got sick of being pushed around and didn't want Russia to be a feudal state to America any longer.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, America's really dumb, and it's going to keep being dumb.
So we're talking about the censorship, and not only newspapers, but historians are also pivotal in propaganda, times of propaganda, and they rallied to the cause. Creel established the CPI's Division of Civic and Educational Cooperation under the leadership of University of Minnesota historian Guy Ford. Several of the nation's leading historians assisted Ford in simultaneously promoting U.S. aims and demonizing the enemy. CPI's penultimate pamphlet, The German Bolshevik Conspiracy, alleged that Lenin and Trotsky and their associates were paid German agents who were betraying the Russian people on behalf of the imperial German government. Most U.S., basically they were trying to, trying to make people hate both Bolsheviks and Germany at the same time. Most U.S. newspapers dutifully reported the story uncritically and unquestioningly. The New York Times, for example, ran a story under the headline, "Documents Prove Lenin and Trotsky Hired by Germans."
Oh,
that's your lovely New York Times. Within a week, the Times and the Washington Post were both reporting charges that the documents were widely known to be brazen forgeries. So like a week after they reported it as being true, they started questioning it. Creel flipped out. He flailed wildly in a threatening letter to the editor of the Evening Post saying, "I say to you flatly that the New York Evening Post cannot escape the charge of having given aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States in an hour of national crisis." I always love that. They still use that fucking bullshit now where they're like, well, you may be speaking they're basically saying you may be speaking the truth, but you're giving aid to the enemy by caring about what the truth is.
I got to tell you, Americans need to buckle up for the fact that when we go under, and we're going to go under soon here with our economy and everything, because we've painted ourselves into a corner, the world will have zero sympathy for us. None. Nobody. No one will. You're already starting to see China, Russia, and India. India is an emerging market. It has 1 billion people. They're trading oil and products not using the dollar. And all of these countries, India and Pakistan are sort of unifying over their not going to help Americanness. I think we are going to be all alone. Even Western Europe is going to quietly go, we should probably line up with Russia and China. All these, look at Australia. Australia is like, well, we'll line up with America as long as we have to, but then they get a lot of Chinese
part of the reason
money.
The U.S. views this proxy war as useful is because Germany and France especially were creating big inroads with Russia and they weren't aligning with Russia over the United States, but they were creating economic ties between Russia and Germany and France and, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, et cetera. And so the U.S. it took some effort. It took some propaganda. It took some, it obviously took Putin's moves as well, but have succeeded in getting France and Germany to finally, basically fully side with the U.S. So the U.S. views this proxy war is useful on several fronts.
Yeah, that's part of it too. One of the main things that happened, this was probably 3 weeks to a month before the Russian invasion, was America had said they were really trying to stop this pipeline between Germany and Russia. And we're basically saying you need to buy American oil and natural gas, not the Russian stuff. And ours is more expensive. And at some point, some of these Western European countries are going to go, you know what? No, we don't need NATO here. No, and China and Russia are going to come in with a better alternative and go, it's what look what China's been doing all throughout Africa and other third world countries. they've spent all this money on infrastructure. They've come to these poor countries and say, we'll build you a new port, a new soccer stadium, a new whatever, airport, trains. And those countries are like, great. They didn't come in with the swinging the big red, white, and blue dick of, you better play ball. We're going to bomb the shit out of you. Like, oh, what a novel concept of like, we'll just help you economically and we'll get something in return for it. China's like, we'll update your port and infrastructure so we can get all of our products onto your continent.
Yeah. Yep. So later, years later, all of this propaganda during World War I was rightfully criticized. But even despite the later criticism, controlling public opinion became a central element in all future war planning. Harold Lastwell wrote about it. He said, during the war period, it came to be recognized that the mobilization of men and means was not sufficient. There must be a mobilization of opinion. Power over opinion, as over life and property, passed into official hands because the danger from license was greater than the danger of abuse. Indeed, there is no question but that government management of opinion is the inescapable corollary of large-scale modern war. The only question is the degree to which the government should try to conduct its propaganda secretly and the degree to which it should conduct it openly. So, really, they realized during World War I that this is how we do war. We have to have a huge propaganda effort. And you see it. I just did a video at patreon.com/LeeCamp where I just did a video where I happened to have a 2003 New York Times, the lead up to the Iraq War. It's like days before the invasion. And I just went through the cover stories and all of the garbage propaganda in just so many levels. And it's like every time they do it. And that's why the New York Times is as successful as it is. If it were doing anything else, if it were not manufacturing consent for war for the American empire, it would not be around anymore. The New York Times and all the others, obviously, that have existed a long time, they exist that long because they are beneficial to the ruling elite. That's why they're there. So it's like, don't act surprised right now that we're seeing this avalanche of propaganda. It's happened anytime there's been a lead up to war. And I think right now is hopefully not a lead up to a hot war, but it is currently a proxy war, a lead up to the largest Cold War we've seen in decades and decades. And that's what they're manufacturing consent for. Anyway, campuses also, and this might sound familiar as well, became a hotbed of intolerance. University professors who spoke against the war were fired. Others were cowed into silence. At Columbia University, the President Butler, exclaimed in announcing the end of academic freedom on campus. He said, quote, "What had been tolerated before became intolerable now. What had been wrong-headedness was now sedition. What had been folly was now treason. There is and will be no place in Columbia University, either on the rolls of the faculty or the students, for any person who opposes or counsels opposition to the effective enforcement of the laws of the United States or who acts, speaks, or writes treason." Basically, if you even just counsel someone to be against the war, you are committing treason. The separation of any such person from Columbia University will be as speedy as the discovery of his offense. If you tell someone the war is bad, you would be kicked out of Columbia University immediately. The following October, Columbia announced the firing of two prominent faculty members for their outspoken opposition to the war. Professor Charles Beard, arguably the nation's leading historian in the first half of the 20th century, he resigned in protest. Even though he did support the war, he did not support the firing of professors. And he said, quote, "If we have to suppress everything we don't like to hear, this country is on a pretty wobbly basis. This country was founded on disrespect and the denial of authority, and it is no time to stop free discussion." So, boy, could that be useful now to know that.
I just hate when guys like that try to muck everything up with logic and facts.
I know. Even though he disagreed with them, he was able to say, "I disagree with you. I would still like for you not to be deleted, imprisoned, canceled, fired. Like I've just been."
Yep.
But right now, of course, what we're seeing is the mass destruction of anything that is anti-war. anybody on the left. I mean, slowing down of live streams, shadow banning, demonetization, and as I've already mentioned, all of my YouTube videos over the past 8 years of Redacted Tonight, all banned globally. So if you don't think that's censorship, then I can't fucking help you. I don't know who or what you are.
It's like insane to me. I tried to go on, just find RT America is no longer on YouTube, and it says not available in your country is what YouTube told me.
And that's every country, by the way, or pretty much every country, because I know people that have tried with their VPNs to check it from every different country, and I don't know if there's anyone that can view it anymore. You can find all the old episodes at odyssey.com, ODYSEE.com. It's kind of like YouTube, and they have pretty much all our old episodes. So.
Yeah, all my videos are on Odyssey as well. I haven't been over there in a while, and supposedly they've been paying me in crypto, but I don't know what, and I haven't checked it. So maybe I'm a millionaire, Lee Camp. Who knows?
You got those shadow millions lurking in the shadows. Yeah. So I'm gonna wrap up there for this episode. There's plenty more coming up, but that was part one, mainly focused on the censorship during World War I. There's a little more of the censorship, but I think it's a good place to wrap up for this episode.
I think it's great, and I can't wait to learn more about how World War I. I mean, it's really it's very fitting, because we've talked about, actually, we mentioned a lot on this show, on both of our shows, about Smedley Butler. And Smedley Butler, in the 30s is when he wrote his book, War is a Racket. But he talks about,
I think we should do an episode on him.
We should do a full episode on him, because he really talks about all this stuff in like the late 1800s that I didn't even know about, like post Civil War, like in the Philippines and all, I helped the banana boys, and all that shit. We need to talk about that, man. Cause he was ahead of his time. And you just see that, all wars are bullshit. So,
by the way, before I forget, anybody who's in Europe or knows about Europe, Graham and I are looking into touring there, doing some live government secrets, which we'll then put online for everyone else to watch or enjoy. But we don't know that much about venues and stuff in some of the bigger cities in Europe and the UK. So if you're out there and you may know something about a venue, and we're not talking, we're talking 100 to 200 seaters, not massive venues, but so if you know anything like that, that's well known in your area in Europe, or in some of the larger cities in Europe and UK, hit us up. You can email leecampmail@gmail.com, leecampmail, MAIL @gmail.com. And hit us up and let us know, because we're looking into it for, end of summer, early fall.
Yeah, probably September-ish is what we're looking at. So if we could find some 100 to 200 seat venues in any cities in Europe, we're looking to do like a tour of shows, and we're looking at possibly doing like going to a city and maybe doing like one night of stand-up and one night of government secrets, but at the very least doing as many live government secrets as we can around Europe. So,
and if you happen to have an Airbnb where you want to give us rooms and like free croissants, then we won't. I'm not sure we'd argue. Like,
do you have like a castle that we could stay in for a while?
If you happen to have a wing of a castle and just like loads of naked women out there, then like just hit us up. Like,
do you have like gold? Just boxes of gold to give us? That'd be cool. And us to be carried around on horseback around Europe. Could you do that? Do you have your own rail car that has a sleeper that we can just attach to a train and just ride around like President Lincoln did or something?
And horses to pull our private rail car down the lines. Yeah.
So any of these, but we're not asking for much. Just basic castles and gold and horses.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah,
people can find my stuff at patreon.com/Lee Camp. I don't know if I've mentioned that yet. And hopefully some announcements in the weeks to come of a new project that may fill the hole in my heart of Redacted tonight.
Folks, support the show by going to liberapay.com/government secrets. We have a bunch of people supporting us there. It's really cool. We appreciate it. And then go to grahamelwood.com. I've got tour dates. April 6th, I'm in Waikiki headlining the Blue Note. And then April 14th through the 16th, I'm headlining the Zanies in Rosemont, Illinois, and the suburbs of Chicago. We'll be doing 4 shows in 3 nights. Check that out. And I should be posting soon. I have dates in Southern California, the end of April in Ventura and Flappers in Burbank. Those will be up soon. So keep checking back to grahamelwood.com. Sign up for the newsletter, and you get it. It's free, and you get a free smoothie thing. So check all that out.
Thanks, man. I will see you next week.
You got it, buddy. Godspeed. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. We are still in our 9th month of demonetization from YouTube. So support what we're doing at patreon.com/GrahamElwood or rockfin.com/GrahamElwood, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. It's free to sign up, and there's a premium level at $10 a month. And for that, you get everybody on the platform's premium content. Myself, Lee Camp, Ron Placone, Jimmy Dore, Whitney Webb, Kim Iverson, Abby Martin, and many, many others. You can also support what we're doing at Venmo at Graham-Elwood. And go to grahamelwood.com. We have a PayPal button and a PO box. I also have crypto wallets, which are all in the show notes. Thanks for supporting what we do.